Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my weekly wrap-up. I read a total of 6 stories and I'm really happy with this week's because 3 of them were physical books. I did have the weekend off, which definitely helped. I would not have been able to finish that many physical books without those 2 additional days to read and not be distracted by my husband or anything else other than my dog. I put in my goals for the rest of the year. So if you've seen my stats videos, then you know what my goals are. And one of the biggest ones was finishing my shelf that had books where I'd started the series or I knew that I could jump right into the next one in the series and knock it out. So I've done really, really good with that so far. And it's something that I want to continue next week. But we're just going to go ahead and get into the books that I finished this week. So the first one is The Fallout, which I gave 5 stars. Getting back to normal isn't easy when you feel rejected and are being followed by someone no one else sees. So this story is not a paranormal story. This is actually the second book in a series. So the first book is The Compound. You definitely get the same presence of a villain in this one. You also get the family dynamics, but they become complicated in new ways. And also there is a much bigger presence of a sci-fi element, and there is also the thrilling conclusion, similar to how thrilling it was in The Compound. That's how I can say things non-spoilery. So if you want to go ahead and skip ahead to the next book, check out the timestamps down below. I do want to get into some details here, which are definitely going to include some spoilers. So again, with any of these books, you can check out the timestamps to skip ahead once I enter spoiler sections. So this is the second book, and it's also the last book in the series. So they have made it out of the compound where the dad had kept them locked away for 6 years underground. They were having to drink their mother's breast milk to get nutrition because he had also tampered with the food supply to see just how far he could take it with the family. They also had this yellow room where they kept the small children because he had his wife continue to get pregnant, not only so that she could supply them more nutrition as far as breast milk. With her getting pregnant back to back, she would continue to have that as a resource, but also they were going to literally cannibalize the small children that she was having. Our main character couldn't really go into that room and interact with the children because he knew that they were going to be what they called the supplements, and he didn't want to be attached if it ever came down to that. So at the end of the book, he winds up finding out that his father has told them a lie. It's not really the end of the world. And he's just locked them down there for his own experimental gains because he's the scientist dude and he's very rich. They wind up escaping. They think that he gets burned in an explosion that happens when they do escape. But then as they're integrated back into the real world and our main character gets to see his twin again, and it was his fault that the twin wasn't down there with them because he deceived the twin. Long story, but so there is a little bit of feelings of rejection when it comes to the other twin because the twin that stayed above ground the whole time, he's had a fairly normal teenage life, and the guy that's been below is pretty awkward because he hasn't been able to socialize, and he hasn't even really socialized with his other siblings that were down there with him that were not the supplements. So that causes some friction, especially when a new guy is introduced. And Eli is very suspicious of everyone trying to get in on the family because they're kind of in hiding. They don't want anyone to know where they're staying. The world has figured out what the father did, but some people also praise the father because he's like this big-time scientific philanthropist type person. So him being suspicious of this new friend to his twin brother makes the twin brother not really want to hang out with him anymore. And then he also has more of a bond with his older sister now. that the twin that was above ground doesn't understand because they were never close beforehand, but she helped them escape the compound. So that's why they've gotten close. And she is also wanting to find her biological parents because she was adopted. She does find out who her biological mother was, who happens to be a prisoner who I think was in there for murder or something. So there's that personal conflict of, am I blood, basically? Like, does blood define kind of who you are as a person? So that was an interesting conversation, and I think it was definitely well done. With the sci-fi elements, so it was sci-fi in a way with the first book because you thought that maybe it was the end of the world, and then he's having to, like sneak onto a computer and all this other kind of stuff. So it was a little techie, and it was definitely thrilling. But the second book definitely introduces a sci-fi element because the father has discovered a serum that's basically like the fountain of youth, and he can reverse a person's age, or he can stall their age at a certain point. But of course, it's not a perfect science. So the guy that befriended the twin that was above land was actually one of the bad guys that was aiding the father and knew that they were underground the whole time and didn't do anything to get them out and just kind of let the world think that they were dead. So he's a teenager in the book because his age scientifically has been lowered to like a teenager, which explains why Eli's twin felt comfortable with him and let him in on all the family secrets because he did know him. He just didn't know that he had done that. So then the father is having this guy follow them around everywhere so that he could get integrated in their life somehow. And the reason why is because he wants to get them onto a plane to go to this private island that he's bought. And he's set up this new type compound where they're no longer going to be underground, but he's definitely still doing experiments. He wants to figure out all of the kinks with this serum that he's developed in order to market it to the world. It does have the positive benefits of being able to cure the disease that makes children rapidly age. I think it's called progeria. It is stated in the story, and it is a real disease. It's like the Benjamin Button, but it's like the Benjamin Button, except for you get really old really quick, and it's a rare disease. So the science came about from altruistic reasons, but then of course when it gets into his hands, he has nefarious purposes for it. I love that he died by his own creation because Eli injects him with the serum, and the kinks are not all worked out, so he basically becomes this deflated human being, which he had done to several other people, and he had them like cattle in these big human-sized cribs for like adults. And then the whole place exploded, so they were put out of their misery, and like he's dead, gone for good. No third book. Like, it's upper. Our character barely escapes. He's literally having to chase a plane to get on it with his two siblings that were with him because they were tricked. They thought that they were going to their old family home because the mother was going to sell it, so they wanted to kind of like have a goodbye and a bonding moment. Yeah, so the villainy, the thrills, everything that you got from the first book, you definitely get with this one. Also, with the kid that was above land, he is getting introduced to 4 new siblings that he didn't know existed, plus the ones that he thought was dead. So it's very complicated for him, but also Eli hasn't really had any relationships with the younger siblings either, because again, he thought he was going to eventually have to eat them. So, very interesting story. Then we move on to Mermaid Bride, which I also gave a 5-star. When a boy falls from the sky, a young mermaid saves him and takes him to the shore where a land woman nurses him back to health. Now both of them love the same man, and winning his heart is a matter of life and death. This one is full of twists. It definitely does not follow the original Mermaid storyline, but it does keep several of the elements where instead of like him, you know, I think there is a part where he falls off of a ship and she saves him. So this one, the boy falls out of the sky, the mermaid saves him and then takes him to this woman that kind of like guards the barrier between the shore and the mer people. So she doesn't technically come all the way to shore. She goes to like this buoy that's the dividing line. They're not allowed to like enter each other's territory. So then the land girl goes over there and like takes over and gets the guy, and the mermaid like swims off. They can't communicate with each other because the mermaid doesn't have a voice. You don't get a voice until you get to like 13 to 15, and this mermaid is like 12 years old. And so she can tell that this girl has some kind of bond with this guy. She doesn't really know what it is. And then of course, as she's like aiding him to help, they're around the same age, and this girl is almost 32, so she's like the same age as me, and this guy is like age appropriate for that as well. Well, so the Ursula does come into play. This happens at the beginning of the story, so I don't feel like it's much of a spoiler. I will tell you when we get into like this stuff will ruin the book for you area, so you can skip ahead. So she goes to this Ursula character who turns her into the human form, but in exchange for it, she only has a month to marry the guy. Ursula has her own ulterior motives, which you find out about later in the book. But this causes an issue because this young girl isn't thinking clearly. A 30-year-old man in his right mind is not going to marry a 12-year-old, whether she's going to die if he doesn't or not. Plus, he has feelings for this land person too, so it's another reason for him not to want to do that. So then our land person is like, I can't really be with you and know that our love is the cause of this young girl's death. But, of course, like, the naivety, it's not a reason that, it's not like she deserves to die, but it's also her fault at the same time because she made these poor decisions. And then this mermaid continues to make poor decisions throughout the story that are just very selfish, and it affects everyone around her. The thing is that this world is also different from the original mermaid stories. So they have land dwellers, they also have the mer people in the sea, and they have fairies who live in the sky that have wings. There are multiple ways that you can change your body. So you can change your body through marriage, you can change it through sorcery, and there's another one where you go through this process and then like implant a jewel into your shoulder, but it's very painful, and that's for like warrior type people. It was extremely interesting. I thought the world building was really well done. The insta-love romances that took place, I was kind of like, this is ridiculous, but I also enjoyed it at the same time, which is why I still gave it a 5-star. Moving on to the spoiler section, so click on ahead to the next book if you want to avoid spoilers. So, So the main girl is trying to take the mermaid back to this Ursula person to strike a new deal so that she won't die. And the kid makes another foolish trade. She winds up giving up 10 years of her life to this Ursula character so that she will be aged older and she'll be old enough for this guy that fell from the sky to fall in love with. And then they find out after this that he is actually a murderer that killed the princess of like the Fae in the sky, and that's why he was thrown into the ocean and his body had changed into human form, because you can change your human form by murdering, like taking someone's life. You can change your form, so that's how they just look like he was human, but really he had been like a prince in the sky. So he like murdered his sister, I guess, something like that. But anyway, it was super interesting. And then you still have the main girl in love with him despite knowing that he's a monster. and it kind of makes you think that there's this spell on her, which does get explained because the Ursula figure had made him be where he's very appealing. Which is why the young mermaid had fell for him right away. And it's also kind of why our main character fell for him. Then they're on the ship and they deceive him by having this veiled wedding. So they have the young girl who's changed her age marry him, because if she doesn't marry him at that point within 3 days, she'll die. And the main girl has found out that he's a murderer. So they're like, okay, we'll have y'all married. That will break your curse to him. And then we can kill him before he collects a mermaid heart. Because he needs to collect the mermaid heart. That will seal his deal where he had to kill, like, someone from the land. He had to kill a mermaid. And he had to kill the person in the air in order to open this portal. But also, the medallion that he had that, like, collected the things, it was sealed by, like, you had to love the person and, like, marry them, and that would seal it, and then it would open the portal. So they had to have a marriage ceremony. But he didn't know that he was marrying the young girl, because it was veiled. So, also, the witch had stabbed the land girl and said, if you betray him, then you will die. Like, you will die a horrible death. So she takes this medicine that, like, numbs you to where someone could, like, amputate a limb or something and you wouldn't go into shock. So she takes that medicine and, like, lays on the couch in the cabin of this ship. So she's dying because she's just betrayed this guy because he's marrying this other woman. He didn't know that he was marrying her. And so she's dying. And so then they have to kill Ursula. That will be the only way to, like, undo what's killing her. So there's this big fight between the mermaids, the land guy, and Ursula as she's dying. And then he comes, like, back to her and is, like, holding her in his arms and everything. And he decides he will give his life in order to heal her. So he does. So he doesn't even get what he wants in the end. But it's like his small redemptive act. And you also find out that he was, like, very disfigured before he had come to Ursula. Like, his wings were, like, curved and broken where he couldn't fly. So he was kind of, like, seen as a disgrace. And he was ridiculed. So you understand kind of mentally where he was coming from when he went to Ursula and struck a deal. But yeah, so very twisted mermaid retelling. Supposedly, there's supposed to be another story, but this one does end where it's very settled. We know that she's decided, like, okay, I need to just take a break, not worry about men right now, and she's gonna go serve 20 years in the mountain with the other people that are, like, around her age. And then once their term of service is over, they'll get their true love. So the mermaid dude that is the brother of the young mermaid kind of, like, tells her he's interested. Because she can get out of her years of service if she marries before she's 32. It's very all over the place, but I really enjoyed it. But there was supposed to be another story called The Mermaid Trial, but this one did work as a standalone. There's not the happy ending because, like, the guy that she was in love with dies, but also he was a killer, so, like, come on. But yeah, I liked it. Then we move on to Smoky Mountain Temper, which I gave a 4-star. This is the 3rd book in the Smoky Mountain series. All of them can technically be read as standalones. I went into very non-spoilery details on the last video that I posted, which was recommending this series. So I will put that up in the card if you want to go see that. I'm going to try to briefly go over the stuff here, and then I am also going to wind up maybe going into some spoilers that I didn't touch on in that video. Since it was not meant to be a review video, it was more so just telling you about each of the stories. So Smoky Mountain Temper, gave it a 4-star. This was the only one in the series that I did give a 4-star. All the other ones got 5s. The only reason why this one got a 4 is because I felt like the Insta-Love was a little too fast, whereas the other ones had a bit more of a foundation to stand on. So even though it was still Insta-Love, I understood like the severe reasons why they did it. Also, I did use the text to speech where the Kindle reads it to you really fast. So because I spent less time like listening to the story, that could have also affected me thinking it was even more so Insta-Love than the other ones, because it just took me less time to consume. So again, nothing really wrong with this series. Absolutely enjoy, highly recommend. So this one, when a baker is behind on rent and a landlord threatens to kick her out, she doesn't know what to do, especially when a bad fall takes her out of commission for a few days. So he gives her 30 days to not only pay her back rent, but also pay her current rent. So she's like putting up a sign. She's doing a whole bunch of decorations. It's January, so she's already decorating for Valentine's Day, and she winds up falling and hitting her head and getting a concussion. This is the same time when he comes into the store, because she said, I can go ahead and pay you all of January's rent right now. So he shows up and he finds her on the floor. So then he proceeds to take her to all of her appointments, and they start to like share meals together and go on little side adventures, kind of like dating but not dating. They're definitely enemies at the beginning of it. I will say that. So that's, I can't really tell you too much about this one. So Alec is the landlord type guy. He doesn't really show a lot of his emotions. So she only sees his soft side once he kind of feels some guilt for her falling in his, like, one of his businesses that he's over. So they kind of start to have a little bit of a relationship at that point. Alec has been a ladies' man for years. He hasn't really had any relationship with God in a long time. This is a Christian romance, by the way. And so then there's Lacey. She hasn't been in a relationship in a long time. She also has like food allergies and stuff. So she does a lot of gluten-free type baking. So it's kind of like specialized healthy treats. She has him eat a quiche looking brownie thing. Or it was a zucchini, it was like a zucchini bread is what she has him eat. So she's very healthy because of health reasons. But he tries to get her to kind of loosen up because she's very stable but also unstable at the same time, because she's not getting the money that she needs from the baking. But anyway, I want to get into a little bit of spoilers. So again, skip ahead to the next if you don't want any spoilers. So spoilery. There is a kiss that they shared. They like went zip lining and stuff like that. It was so much fun. So there's this kiss that they share. Then they get into like this little fight because she's still like, you know, you're taking all of my time to come for me to spend time with you, and for you to make me go to all these medical appointments because you think that my headaches mean that like something's gone wrong, even though the doctors had cleared her previously. And she's like, you're doing all that, but yet you're wanting me to make up all this money and give it to you, and the rent's already high. So she's like, I'm going to find a new building to rent that's cheaper, and I'm just going to move my business over there. So they have this little spat. And then it's a little while later, and he's trying to get to his cabin, and there's a blizzard that comes in. So he can't drive, he can't really see ahead of him, so he gets stuck. So then he has to like walk to his place, so he's texting her. She winds up finding the text, and she's like, oh my gosh, everyone, like he's out there in this storm right now. So then her whole family is like praying that he'll be able to find the way. And then of course there's like the Deus Ex Machina thing, Which makes sense, because again, this is a Christian story, so there needs to be a God element where, like, the moon kind of brightens his path to where he's able to see and get home. And then, of course, once he gets there, he's like, you know, I could have died. I don't want to have any, like, issues with you. I want to marry you instead. So there's, like, the rapid engagement, and then all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to drop everyone's rent. I've been overcharging and I feel bad about it. So he has a little bit of a turn away from being selfish. So yeah, I liked it. Then we move on to Smoky Mountain Embers, which I gave 5 stars. When Cade's father dies, Lucille, the one who got away, tries to distract him from his pain with hikes and photography. So there is a fire that's going on up in the mountains. So she is like, hey, do you want to go hiking with me tomorrow? Because whenever they used to date, they used to go hiking and stuff. And she is taking pictures from like one mountain peak over into the valley where the fire is happening because she's a photographer. So she's been traveling all over the world doing photography and like landscapes and events and stuff like that happen. So there's several days where they're going on these trips. And so they're reconnecting. This is a second chance romance. So they broke up in, I guess, the end of high school or college or something, because she wanted to go off and see the world and he wanted to stay home. Yeah, that's all I can tell you right now before I get into some spoilers. So now, some spoilers. So, I believe he is called to fight the fire, and there's also the guy that was volunteering with the fire department that was the police officer in the first story, Smoky Mountain Comfort. So they're, like, fighting this fire, and she is at this, like, resort or something like that, where her aunt is, or maybe it was his aunt. I think it might have been his aunt. So anyway, she's at this resort, and that's where people they were freaking out because they're like, you told us the fire was far away, we were going to be able to take shelter here, it was going to be fine, and then it's not. So there's like ash everywhere and like smoke inhalation and all that stuff is happening. So they're trying to get everyone out, and then there's this aunt, and she doesn't want to leave. And so, of course, he winds up getting to her as he's, like, fighting the fire. He winds up getting to her, and, like, they get in the car, and they're like, we have to, like, evacuate now, or it's going to be too late. They can't manage it. So they're going, but the streets are, like, completely packed with other people all trying to leave at the same time, and, like, fire is kind of coming at them from every side. So they're having to, like, get out of cars and, like, run to safety. And they wind up seeing the aunt who does manage to leave, but then she's, like, getting blocked by, like, fallen trees and stuff like that, so they're trying to save her. Which then leads into the overlap with the next story. So, Smoky Mountain Redemption, I gave 5 stars. Late to evacuate from this big fire, Amelia gets stuck in a traffic jam trying to get free. So this is a redemption story. She starts off as this very selfish person. She is definitely a serial gold digger. She uses men to pay her rent and buy her food and everything. So she just uses her sexual wiles to manipulate people. But then, of course, this is a redemption story. So once this fire happens, she almost loses her life due to her, like, wanting to hold on to earthly possessions and not leave. And so then she, of course, has to go on this journey to turn things around. And one of the people who helps her is a cop who helps her escape this fire, and his name is Luke. So he kind of has an idea of what her past is, but he's trying to help her anyway. He winds up getting her a good job. And there's also another woman who, like, gives her clothing and stuff so that she can change. And another girl, like, takes off her own shoes because she's wearing these, like, really thick socks. so that she can walk on the asphalt without burning her feet as they're trying to escape this fire. So, like, people are giving her lots of small measures of kindness that are just helping her see that she's not the person that she wants to be, and she wants to be better. So this Smoky Mountain redemption story is about her kind of redeeming herself. It is the last book that's out right now, but there are 2 more that are coming. So there's Smoky Mountain Beginnings and there's Smoky Mountain Serenity that will be out soon. I think one comes out in October and the other one comes out in December. I'm not sure. It might be that one comes out earlier, like soon, and then the last one's October. I'm not sure, but anyway, they should all be out this year. So I'm really excited to wrap up the series. As far as this one, I do want to get into a little bit of spoilers, but I also, one of the spoilers does have to do with the trigger warning, so I'll just tell you the trigger warning is suicidal ideation. Not with the main character, but with the sub-character who's introduced later in the story. It does come as a shock and out of nowhere, so I just wanted you to know that that's there. There's also some self-harm that you see happening, and there's also a violent act. It doesn't result in severe danger. There's no death that results from the violent act, but it is, like, shocking. So if those are triggers, then you might want to avoid this story. This story is also the shortest of the bunch. It was only 40 pages. And I honestly didn't think I was going to be able to give it more than 3 stars. I didn't think it was going to be able to develop in that quick time, especially not if there was a romance. But it shockingly did, which is why I gave it the 5 star. So in order to complete the redemption arc, I have to talk to you about what happened at the end. So again, spoilers ahead. Go ahead and skip to the next section. So, spoilery parts. Of course, she's forming this relationship with Luke. They go on some dates. She has this new job where she's at this, like, church-type center that helps people. And she sees this girl on the street, and she's thinking, like, I can just tell this girl is sad. And so she's like, hey, do you want some hot cocoa? So she, like, gives her the cocoa. And then the girl says, like, that she wants to end it. She doesn't want to live anymore. And she's trying, so then the woman is, like, trying to tell her, like, you don't want to do that. I know things are tough right now. I can tell you're going through some stuff. But, like, I can tell you from firsthand experience, it gets better. And she's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I've sold my body to men. I've done all these drugs. Like, I'm just this horrible person, and my life's not going anywhere. And then the woman is like, I do understand. Like, I've sold myself to men too, because she has done prostitution in a roundabout way of, like, having sex with these men and then them, like, throwing money at her. So she does understand. So then the teenager is, like, listening, but at that point she's already stabbed her because she got really mad when she was trying to say that she understood. And she's like, there's no way. And she, like, stabs her and she wants to hurt herself at the same time. So then another person is, like, coming into the office and she's like, I need to call the police or something. So then she's calling Luke. And so she doesn't want the girl to get in trouble. And she's trying to tell the girl, like, I know you think that you are unable to be redeemed, especially now that you stabbed me. And, like, it's going to be hard for a while. Like, you are going to get, you know, punished for this. She stabbed me. But, like, I believe that you can turn your life around. So it is, like, a story of redemption, not only for herself, but also showing that if you are a person that had negative circumstances and you didn't make the best decisions, then God can use your personal experiences of doing bad things to show other people that they can come out of that as well. So that's what the story is about. Again, I just thought this entire series was so well done. Each of the stories had something dramatic that happens, and that's kind of what causes people to realize, I want to get married to you, because these were all, every single one of them ended in a proposal. And some of them ended with like babies and stuff. So Luke does wind up proposing after the stabbing because he's like, I don't want to lose you. I want to be with you. So they get married. Then we move on to the last story that I finished this week, which was Monument 14 Savage Drift. This is the third story in the Monument 14 series. Safety isn't what any of them thought it would be, and now they must decide what to do about it. That's all I can really tell you without going into a bunch of details. I will say that this one does continue the adventure element that you got in book 2. It also is super action-packed. There are some experiments that are rumored and that you will find out if they're real or not. There are containment camps for refugees, which you already knew about in book 1 that those existed, so you get to see in those camps. There is also a pregnant person, and you get to see how their pregnancy affects the people around them, and vice versa. That's all I can tell you without giving you any specific details and spoiling. So if you want to move on to the conclusion, then there is a timestamp where I kind of just wrap up the video. I might tell you some more details about what I plan on reading next. I don't know. So yeah, you can click on that, but I am going to get into some spoilers. So, spoilers now. So, of course, Astrid is pregnant. It's Jake's baby. Jake is like, he's lost it. His best friend has died. He knows he can no longer have any kids because of his blood type and the chemical agent that was in the air. That's how it affects him, is it makes him sterile. But Astrid is pregnant with his child. So this is like the only child that he's ever going to be able to have that is biological because of the agent that happened. Now, she and the other main guy, the guy, Dean, they are dating now. So it's Jake's baby, but like he's gonna be dad. And so Jake and Dean are all the time getting on to each other because Jake still clearly wants to be with her, but Jake is like still acting immature. He's not even able to take care of himself. He's getting drunk all the time. Like, how is he going to be there to help raise a child? And then Astrid is freaking out because she's hearing these rumors that people from the camp are being taken to this military base to be experimented on if they are pregnant and they were exposed multiple times. There is slight good reason for this, which is that the babies are developing at a faster rate. So it's not as safe to like deliver the child alone. And she does suffer from preeclampsia in the book, which is super dangerous, and she like almost dies. So they have to wind up resorting to going to the military. And their friend Josie has been at basically an internment camp, which they're calling it a containment camp, but they're really treating them like prisoners. They're starving, they're not well clothed. They're freezing because it's the middle of winter, and also on the bottom floor they have all the men. Everyone is type O blood type, which when you were exposed to the agents, it makes you basically become a monster. So you're not physically a monster, but you are much stronger and you're able to do things that you weren't once able to do. Like for instance, Dean, even his vision is cleared. So he doesn't have to wear glasses anymore, and he starts to build muscle, whereas he used to just kind of be really lanky and skinny. And so Josie has killed people a few times now in order to save her friends and for them to be able to get to safety, because they were in the dangerous zone where they like the government bombed it. So it was good that they escaped in Sky on Fire, because the government bombed the whole area in order to clear the air. They had to destroy it. But then there's these rumors of drifts that come by, and the drifts are like where it kind of passes over the city in a cloud and it can affect everyone. So when O's get it, they go into rage mode. So some of this rage kind of stays with you even if you're not currently being affected. So Josie is like the only person who's able to kind of have the rage, but also still be able to make decisions, like not to hurt certain people. So she'll still go on a murdering spree, but like if she loves you, then she's able to avoid that, whereas nobody else really has any control over their actions. Then they all just become like zombie type, ripping people's organs out like monsters. And so Josie is suffering so many things at this camp. She is there with Mario, which is this older guy. He's like 80 years old. He dies in this story. He was trying to like help her and talk to reporters at the fence and tell them that she was there so they could try to get her out. And he winds up getting trampled and then shot with the tranquilizer dart. So she tries to save him, and then this guard that hates her has him get turned away because Josie beats the living crap out of these two gang members that are on the man's floor, because she would not make a deal to date this one guy for protection. So then this guy offers the same deal to this girl who's like 14 years old. And this girl thinks, you know, I can make myself available to this person sexually if they will give us protection. Because Josie's already gone through a lot of crap with these guys. And like the guard making her be on her hands and knees for 2 hours cleaning up pee because one of the little boys had an accident, and she like her knuckles were rubbed raw and she was bleeding like with her knuckles and her knees. And then so she sees what's happening with this guy like basically molesting this girl, even though she's saying it's okay, like I made this decision. Josie's like, hell no, it is not okay. Like, you are a child. This person knows better. I'm not going to let him take advantage of you, regardless of what you're trying to do to help save us. So she's like, I don't care if I get killed. She goes, she gets the girl away, and then she beats the living crap out of this guy and this other guy. So then the guy gets sent to the infirmary, and that's where the guard is like, okay, Mario needs to go. He can't have this bed because this guy needs to have the bed. So this Vinger guy that was the guard, he is like in tight with the gangs, and there's like 3 different gangs. He's just a horrible human being, if you can even call him that. But he also gets killed at the end, and his organs are ripped out by the gang members. So, like, he gets what he deserves. There are some good doctors that are in here, and there are bad doctors who want to do medical testing. So with Josie, with her being the only person who seems to have any control of her thinking during this haze, she's like, okay, she's trying to get Vinger to take her to this place. And so as she's trying to like draw the final straw or whatever with him, because he's already threatened her by taking her to this place. So she's like shaking the gate, and she's trying to tell him to like come get her and like take her, and causing stuff. And these guys are like trying to kill her because she beat up 2 of their gang members. And so anyway, what happens is Nico arrives, which is like her boyfriend. He's been coming to like physically remove her from that containment camp that had all O's because it's super dangerous and they're all like malnourished and stuff. It's horrible. So he arrives just as this cloud comes over, but he has a protective suit, so he puts it on. But she doesn't have a protective suit, and neither do any of the O's. So now a bunch of people were coming out to the gate to save her from the gang members who were going to kill her. And the guards are all there too, and now this O cloud has come. So the O's are in a frenzy. They're all killing each other. The children had came out because they thought that they could help her too, even though some of them are like 5, 8 years old. So then they're turning on each other because they were the closest to each other. So you got like these 5-year-olds trying to kill each other. So then Josie is like seeing Nico, and she wants to get across the fence to go with him. And it's like the only thing that's keeping her in her head is that she sees Nico, and then she sees the kids who have basically been her family for the past bit. So then she is like ripping the kids off of each other and trying to save them. And then she gets darted. So she gets tranquilized, and then they realize she can make decisions. She went on the murder rampage at first, killing some of these gang people, but then she was trying to help the little ones, not kill each other. So then they're like, we need to take her to go get tested on. So they do take her there. But then one of the doctors is like, this is unethical. She's too young. Like, she wouldn't survive this spinal tap that we would need her to get because she's malnourished and she's, like, too small. She won't survive this procedure. But this other god, like, he will do anything in order to get some sort of cure for these people. But it turns out that he's the dad of Braden, which was the best friend of Jake. So they had all went to the same high school, so they were able to give him information about how his son died and what his last days on Earth were like. And the doctor changes his mind and, like, lets Josie go free as long as she will submit to giving him, like, saliva and blood test. They also do saliva and blood test on Astrid and Dean, who are there. I don't think they did it with Nico, because Nico was rarely exposed because he was the type where he would get blisters and die. So he pretty much was, like, masked as much as he could be. Anytime there was exposure, he had to, like, quickly gear up. So he was okay. So I don't think they did any tests on him. But they also tested the baby. So they wound up naming the baby Charlie, which was, like, Astrid's dad's name. And then they gave them Jake's dad's name for a middle name. And then they gave him Dean's last name for, like, another middle name. And then it had a last name too. So then it was kind of like, I thought it was a little, it is like teenage thinking, like, oh, I'm great with being a dad to a kid that's not mine in the second book. Which you still kind of feel like that in the third book, too. Because it's like, yeah, y'all are in love. Y'all are like 16, 17. Y'all aren't ready for this. But at the same time, like, they have been through so much together. Especially in this third book. Like, it is just full of action and, like, life or death moments. And they wind up finding a kid in the back of a trunk. And they wind up taking her back to, like, where her parents were, where they witnessed her mom get slaughtered by a neighbor who was O-type. Oh my gosh, it was just so much. But also they were supposed to return to that house after she got help at a hospital. They never returned, so I don't know what happens with that, with the two kids, because the girl had a brother too, and then this other neighboring family winds up taking care of them, so I guess they're fine. But we didn't get, like, a final chapter with that. But anyway. Oh man, this series was just a lot. It had, like, the teenage immaturity that was just, like, flying off the page. But it also had moments where, like, they make these really tough decisions. And it also had some adults that were shown in a positive light, which you don't always get, where the teenagers always think they're so much smarter than all the adults when it comes to stories like this. And sometimes that is the case, where they're like, hey, we know more about this, and they're able to make decisions. But also there's moments where they let adults in that help them. So there's, like, Mrs. Woosley, which saved them when the initial stuff had started happening. So, like, it was just a really enjoyable series, even though it definitely has a lot of the teenage angst and, like, the immaturity and thinking you're more adult than you are. But it also shows the consequences of thinking that you're more adult than you are, because there's, like, Sahelia was one of the characters, and she was, like, 13, and she wanted to, like, be this older man's, like, boyfriend, and he was gonna take her. It's psycho. I'm glad he got shot. Sicko. And so anyway, like, there's moments where you see how, like, the childlike innocence of thinking things, those processes aren't adult thinking, and so, like, there's consequences to trying to grow up too fast. And you never really find out if Jake makes it to his mother's house, because he winds up leaving them for the second time, where he's like, Dean, you're going to be the dad. You're ready for this. I'm not. I'm gonna go see if my mom's okay. So he like goes away from them. And yeah. But then they all wind up on Nico's family farm for the most part. And they finally get to see their parents again. Some of them no longer have parents, so you don't know what happened to their parents. Like, are they completely orphaned or not? But you do find out that, like, Dean and Alex's parents are there. And also Sahelia's father. They find him. And then Nico has his uncle. So yeah, it was a very wild series. Apparently it did get optioned to be a film, but that was back in like, I think the first book came out in like 2012 where there was talks of it. And then the last stuff that I'd seen about it was 2016. So I don't think it's ever going to become a movie or a TV show. If it hasn't been done already, this happens so many times when books get optioned for film and then it just never goes anywhere for whatever reason. And they had like a very well-known director who did like the Shrek movies and stuff. So I would love it if it did become a movie or a TV show. I think it would work awesome for that. But I don't think it's going to happen at this point. Anyway, wrapping up the super long video, I am glad that I kept it long and I decided to do some spoiler sections because I would love to watch these back and reflect on them if I'm ever curious, like what actually happened in that story if I don't want to reread to catch up. Now, these stories I've not going to need to reread them because I've completed series. I'm so happy with that. So The Fallout was the second book in a duology, so that series I knocked out. Also, I did the standalone The Mermaid Bride story, which was, well, it was written as a standalone, so like I can call that series done, even though, yeah, the second book never came out. I don't know if it will, because again, that was like years ago. I would think that it would be out by now if it was going to happen. So I think the author changed her mind about doing that book. I don't know, but I was satisfied with the first one. But also it was a book that I got at Utopia, and I really want to make those some priority reads because I don't want to be getting a bunch of books that I'm not reading. So I've been kind of working my way through them. Then you have the Smoky Mountain series, which I read all on ebook. But I'm caught up with that series, so super happy about that. Then we had the Shadow Song or whatever. I technically finished that this last Monday, but I had included it in the video before that week's video. So I knocked out that one too. And then the Monument 14 one, Savage Drift, was the third book in a series. So I knocked out like 3 of the last books in a series that I had. I knocked them out and then I caught up with 2 others. So I'm really happy with that reading progress. I definitely want to continue it this coming week. So Book of the Month should let us do some selections soon. I have not read The Bodyguard yet, which I got this month. So I'm considering this being my next read, but I'm not positive. I also have been reading Ready Player 2. So I'm probably like 50 pages into this, somewhere around there. It is quite long and dense. That's just kind of how Ernest Cline's writing is. I hope this one goes into space. There's talk of it. So if it goes to where like they escape planet Earth and go into space, that's what I want this book to be, but I doubt it will. I don't know. We'll see. It would be so cool if it did. But anyway, yeah. So Ready Player 2 is probably the last in the series. I don't know if they're going to have like a Ready Player 3 or something. So that would end a duology if I finish that this coming week. So that would be really cool. And then I'll also need to continue... I need to continue the Zodiac series. This is the second book. There's 4 books. I don't think that I can read 3 remaining back to back. I need space in between worlds. I don't really like to read them back to back. So this is another one that I might try to do this week, which would mean that this would be my physical TBR, these 3 books. But I don't know that I can do it because that's a lot of physical reading. And I doubt I'm going to have this whole weekend off. I hope not. I need money. And then for my priority books that I have over here that I need to read that I got at Utopia, the books just aren't wanting to stay up. I have Gravebriar by Casey L. Bond, and I also have Dark of the Night, and this one is pretty short, so I'm really tempted to read it this week. But that wouldn't help me destroy a series, so I think I might wind up holding off and trying to do it next month. So I don't know what my reading is going to be for the next week. If y'all see this video and you want me to either read Wandering Star, Ready Player 2, or The Bodyguard, let me know down below, and I'll try to make that one of the reads that I read this week. I might do a vlog with The Bodyguard. I think that would be really cool to do a vlog with my Book of the Month books. That might give me more of a reason to read them. And also, if I take more time with reading it, it's okay because I'm getting a whole solid video out of it. So I will probably do that. I will probably do this one for a vlog video. Also, because this does involve a bodyguard. That's one of the tropes that I love. Also, it's a reversal, so the woman is the bodyguard. I was in the Navy, so I feel like I'm going to be able to relate to that. I did have training with like bodyguard type stuff. So it'll be cool to see if she utilizes any of the similar training that I've had, or just the way that she thinks about danger. Even like where you sit in a restaurant, I do stuff like that naturally, where you sit where you have a line of sight to the exit, so that you can see if there's anything suspicious like happening and coming in. So I want to read that so I can give you some of like my background as I'm reading it. But also it's like a romance, so I'm just gonna gush the whole time. But anyway, this is a really long video, so I'm gonna go. But there's like my wrap up / tentative TBR.